We have done several shows related to terrorism, and it has become almost the norm in the modern world. These actions, usually politically and sometimes religiously motivated, always captivate global attention when they occur, and the 1980s was a decade of such activities. But the hijacking of a cruise ship was a new method introduced in 1985, where a terrorist boarded and commandeered a passenger liner, threatening passengers and committing murder. The event involved legal, diplomatic, and military actions by several nations. What was the Achille Lauro? Why was it hijacked? Who were the terrorists? What was the end result? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. The Italian cruise liner Achille Lauro departed Genoa, Italy on October 3rd for a 12-day cruise of the Mediterranean Sea with 748 passengers and 320 crew. On the morning of October 7th, 1985, the Achille Lauro was in port in Alexandria, Egypt, on a temporary stop with 751 passengers disembarking to take the tour of the pyramids, the Valley of the Kings, and shop in Cairo. They were to reboard the ship at Port Said and continue the cruise. The plan to hijack the ship was masterminded by Mohammed Zaidan, who used the pseudonym Abu Abbas, who was something of a failed terrorist. He had been responsible for attacks on Israel in the early 1980s on multiple occasions, and he sent men on hang gliders and in hot air balloons to bomb Israel. The results were not that great. He even tried to set off car bombs, which failed. Some reports state that many of his men were too inept to work with explosives, and they blew themselves up. By 1984, most of his subordinates were either dead, maimed, or in Israeli prisons. All of his attempts were failures, and he had pretty much lost all credibility. In a futile attempt to salvage his reputation, Abbas ordered the hijacking of the Achille Lauro. While the ship was in port, 4 heavily armed Palestinian terrorists who were on board posing as passengers commandeered the ship and took approximately 320 crew members and the 97 remaining passengers still on board hostage. Aiming AK-47s at the captain and passengers, they ordered the ship to leave port. The captain complied, but was able to send a mayday signal. Luckily, the several hundred passengers who planned to reboard at Port Said would never reboard the ship before the hijacking took place. After the Achille Lauro reached the Syrian port of Tartus on October 8th, the terrorists issued their demands. Syria, informed of the situation, refused the ship permission to drop anchor in its waters or even enter the port, at the request of the U.S. and Italian governments, which prompted the terrorists to issue even more dire threats. They stated that they were members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, also known as the Palestine Liberation Front, the terrorist wing of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, led by Mohammed Zaidan, who used the pseudonym Abu Abbas, and he worked directly for the leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat. The Palestine Liberation Front, headed by Abbas, was one of several Palestinian splinter groups from the original Palestine Liberation Organization, led by Yasser Arafat. The terrorists easily took control of the vessel since there was no security force on board. They demanded that Israel release 50 Palestinian terrorists held in custody. They said that if their demands were not met, that they would blow up the ship and kill the 11 Americans identified on board. When they felt that their demands were still not being met, at approximately 3 p.m. on October 8th, they shot and killed Leon Klinghoffer, a 69-year-old Jewish American. Klinghoffer was confined to a wheelchair due to a stroke. His killers shot him in the head and then threw his wheelchair and body overboard. The next morning, they also threatened to kill the British passengers. Klinghoffer's murder backfired on the terrorist, who hoped to obtain global support. In fact, outrage from around the world forced Yasser Arafat to cut PLO ties with the terrorist and to demand that Abbas end the situation. On October 9th, Abbas contacted the terrorists and ordered them not to kill any more passengers and arranged for the ship to return to Egypt. Within hours of Klinghoffer's death, U.S. Navy SEALs were deployed to raid the Achille Lauro. On C-130s, they followed and monitored the ship's movements. The ship then left Syria and headed towards Cyprus, where they were also denied port access. At this time, Arafat, the chairman of the PLO, had been contacted. He sent Mohammed Zaidan to Cairo as a mediator, and both men publicly denied being involved in the hijacking. On October 9th, the Achille Lauro arrived back in Port Said and established a radio contact with Egyptian authorities, and they began negotiations. In exchange for releasing the hostages on board, the hijackers demanded safe passage through Egypt and immunity from prosecution. Egypt agreed to the terms, and at 5 p.m. the men surrendered to Egyptian authorities and freed the hostages. They received a pledge of safe passage to an undisclosed destination and disappeared into Port Said. The U.S., Israeli, and Italian governments wanted the terrorists. Egypt informed all these governments that the hijackers had left the country, but U.S. and Israeli intelligence reports indicated that they remained hiding in Egypt. And they were correct. The multinational intelligence operation and cooperation discovered the location of the plane that the terrorists planned to use in their escape, along with Abbas. President Ronald Reagan gave the order to intercept that aircraft after it left Egyptian airspace. The next day, on October 10th, the 4 hijackers, along with Mohammed Abbas, a member of the Palestine Liberation Front, who had participated in the negotiations, a PLO official, and several Egyptians boarded an Egyptair Boeing 737. The airliner took off from Cairo at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on October 11th and headed for Tunisia. Once the airliner was in international airspace, President Reagan gave the order to intercept the aircraft, and at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, F-14 Tomcat fighters located the airliner 80 miles south of Crete. Without revealing their presence, the F-14s shadowed the airliner as it sought and was denied permission to land at Tunis. After a request to land at the airport in Athens, Greece, was likewise refused, the F-14s then turned on their outboard lights and flew wing to wing with the airliner. It was made clear by the F-14 flight commander to the 737 pilots that the airliner would be shot down if it did not land at the NATO airbase in Sigonella, Sicily. Italy had not been informed of the intercept mission until the airliner was landing because the United States wanted to apprehend the terrorists without Italian interference. But the Italians did have jurisdiction. The SEALs had been following right behind in 2 U.S. Air Force C-141 transport aircraft. When all the aircraft landed somewhat simultaneously at Sigonella, the SEAL assault force landed and immediately disembarked their aircraft and surrounded the 737, intending to capture the terrorists and take them into custody. Italian Prime Minister Bettino Craxi claimed Italian territorial rights over the NATO base and the ship and deployed Italian Air Force personnel and the Carabinieri, the National Military Police of Italy, and they surrounded the SEALs. The airliner's engines had just shut off after touching down at 6:45 p.m. when a tense standoff ensued between U.S. Marines, Navy SEALs, and Italian forces, both sides wanting custody of the terrorists. A delicate international standoff ensued, but the situation was resolved before an assault became necessary. The U.S. eventually capitulated to the Italians and allowed the hijackers to be taken into Italian custody, after receiving assurances that the hijackers would be tried for murder, hijacking, and piracy. Eventually, after a quick diplomatic telephone call, the Italians arrested the hijackers, although Zejdan, aka Abbas himself, was allowed to leave for Yugoslavia despite suspicion of his involvement and against American wishes. The other Palestinian and the Egyptians on board were also released. Reagan was not pleased, and he wanted to investigate their possible involvement in the hijacking. In fact, Israeli intelligence later confirmed the next day that Abbas had been directing the entire hijacking operation by radio. Israeli intelligence had the recordings, and they suspected that the Egyptians and Arafat knew all about it. The Italians also wanted more concrete proof, so they bugged their cells. The inmates were being listened to as they talked to each other. Gathering the electronic intelligence as well as information gathered from interrogations of the prisoners and the listening devices in their jail cells proved that the hijacking was part of a larger conspiracy. On July 10, 1986, the 4 hijackers went on trial in Italy. They were Youssef Magid al-Malki, age 23, Ahmad Maruf al-Asadi, 23, Ibrahim Fatih Abdelatif, 20, and Bassam al-Askar, 17. On trial with them were 11 accomplices, 2 of them not on the Achille Lauro, but on the 737, and they were tied to the crime, with 9 of them, including the mastermind Abbas, tried in absentia. For masterminding the hijacking, Zejdan, aka Abbas, was sentenced to life in prison. The 3 oldest hijackers received sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years in prison. Al-Askar, being only 17, was convicted in a separate trial, being a juvenile. Abbas, who after his escape later admitted his role in the hijacking, was hunted down and located in Iraq during the 2003 invasion of the country and captured by U.S. Special Forces in Baghdad. He died in custody the following year. The 9 conspirators tried in absentia received harsher penalties because, unlike the hijackers proper, who the court believed were acting for patriotic motives, Zejdan, aka Abbas, and the others conceived the hijacking as a selfish political act designed to weaken the leadership of Yasser Arafat. In 1986, Klinghoffer's widow, Marilyn, who died not long after her husband's murder, had established the Leon and Marilyn Klinghoffer Memorial Foundation of the Anti-Defamation League, dedicated to countering terrorism through education and legislation. Marilyn had also filed a lawsuit against the Palestinian Authority. After her death, the Klinghoffer's 2 daughters continued the case, which would drag out for 12 years. The PLO had maintained that the attack was carried out by renegade members of the organization, and it admitted no wrongdoing or responsibility. But finally, in 1997, the PLO settled the case out of court, mainly because foreign aid was on the line and the sum agreed upon was not disclosed, which was a condition of the settlement, according to a family spokeswoman. The PLO also settled with Crown Travel, the New Jersey tour operator that booked the fatal cruise. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.